Hey, this is Father Steve, Episcopal Priest, serving here in the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland, and we're doing our continuing studies of the book of Revelation. This episode will be chapter 20 of the study of the book of Revelation. We're getting ready to wind this down. As you know, there's 22 chapters in Revelation. So, again, one of the main sources of our study is N.T. Wright book, right here. And, of course, the Bible. Okay. So, go ahead and read chapter 20 of Revelation, and then we'll be coming back to our study for this series. Okay. So, you can pause this as you go through. So just a few of my notes for chapter 20 of Revelation. So we see the defeat of Satan, verses 1 through 6, the temporary imprisonment of Satan in the reign of Christ and the martyrs. The period of 1,000 years is symbolic both here and in verses 4 to 7. They suggest a temporary time of righteousness and tranquility before the final eschatological, the end times consumption. Remember this, and this is important as we've been studying Revelation, that there's many descriptions of symbolism and should not be taken literally. Okay? So, verses 7 through 10, the release of Satan in the final conflict, Gog and Magog. We look at Ezekiel chapter 38 verses 38 to 39. We see that Gog and Magog. Verse 9, the beloved city is Jerusalem. And then we would look at verses 11 through 15, the final judgment. Verse 12, the books, the ledgers, a record, what everyone has done. We look at this also, look at Daniel, book of Daniel 7:10. The book of life is distinguished from the books of deeds that's just been opened, judged according to their works. And we'll get back to this, and we'll talk about N.T. Wright. We'll talk about faith over works here momentarily. When we talk about judge according to their works, we look at Matthew 16:27, Romans chapter 2, verse 6 and 2, Romans chapter 2, verse 6, and 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10. Okay, we'll put that aside for right now. So let's get into N.T. Wright's book for everyone, Bible Study Guide, Revelation 22 studies for individuals and groups, and this is kind of an opening for chapter 20. He writes, after I published my book, Surprised by Hope, I had a number of letters and emails from people telling me their experiences with thinking it through, leading study groups on it, and in some cases preaching in the new way I was recommending. The central point of the book is that over against a common Western Christian view that what matters is going to happen when you die. The proper Christian expectation, as has been from the earliest centuries of the Church, is of a two-stage post-mortem reality. First, those who belong to the Messiah go to be with him, as Paul says in Philippians 1:23. Then at last, Jesus will appear as heaven and earth come together in a great, fresh act of new creation. That will be the moment of bodily resurrection of the saints, the moment the dead have been waiting for. Resurrection, abolishment of death itself, giving God's people new bodies to live in God's new world, is the great hope both of ancient Judaism and of classic Christianity. A lot of my readers took to this like ducks to the water, which was, of course, gratifying, but not so for others. One pastor reported that he had preached enthusiastically on this theme the next Easter day, only to be confronted after service by his leading lay people, extremely put out because this wasn't the Easter message they were used to hearing. Whoa. Okay, so let's talk about this icebreaker question that he has. How have you been taught to think about heaven and the afterlife? How have you been taught to think about heaven and the afterlife? Okay, so let's look at Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 6, specifically verses 1 through 3. What happens to the dragon what happens to the dragon? Okay. All right. We must not forget that the Satan, which really means the accuser, was initially a member of the heavenly council. Though he has fallen from his position, he may still, by God's permission, play a role. The Satan's job was always to accuse where accusation was due, to make sure that, as a good director of public prosecutions, all wrongdoing was exposed. In what ways has the accuser abused and distorted this role? Kind of a pretty heavy question there, is it not? All right, the third question. In what specific ways does the accuser try to lead us astray? In what specific ways does the accuser try to lead us astray? Now we're going to look at verses 2 and 4, this next question. For what period of time will the dragon be bound and the faithful martyrs reign with Christ? Now remember, there's a lot of symbolism here, okay? Pretty much obvious what the time is. Now looking at verse 6. Why do those who share in the first resurrection become priests of God? Why do those who share in the first resurrection become priests of God? And that's dealing with verse 6. I'm going to skip a couple questions here. Okay, now we're going to look at verse 7. Read verses 7 through 15. What is the significance of the Satan being released after 1,000 years are ended? What is the significance of the Satan being released after the 1,000 years have ended? Okay? Now, question. The troops go straight for the camp of the saints, but no battle takes place. What happens instead? Now looking at verses 9 to 10. The troops go straight for the camp of the saints, but no battle takes place. What happens instead? All right, now let's take a look at verse 10. How does this picture of the ultimate overthrow of the devil give us hope to face troubles today? How does this picture of the ultimate overthrow of the devil give us hope to face troubles today? And that's in verse 10. Okay, now I'm going to read this. I have to preface this question with a long statement. Babylon was overthrown 3 chapters ago. The 2 monsters met their doom in chapter 19. Now, at last, the dragon has been overthrown as well, and for good. Verse 10. There remain the last great powers, death and Hades. Death is here both the fact and the power of death. Hades is the abode of the dead, a place from which they cannot escape except by a great new act of God. In ancient cosmology, the sea was not thought to be a part of Hades, so that those who died by drowning in the sea and were never recovered for burial formed a separate category of the dead. But they too will now be brought to stand before the great white throne, which seems to have replaced the original throne of chapters 4 and 5. Heaven and earth are being shaken, and the throne room itself seems to be under reconstruction. Now take a look at verses 12 to 15 of chapter 20. What is the significance of the books that are open as the dead gather around the throne? So what is the significance of the books? I just mentioned this in my notes before we began. This is an interesting statement I'm going to make from N.T. Wright. He says, countless anxious Protestant teachers, worried that this passage somehow does away with justification by faith, missed a point entirely. When Paul speaks of justification by faith, he was talking about the present reality according to which those who believe in Jesus as the risen Lord are already assured of the divine verdict that they are in the right, and are also assured thereby that this same verdict will be issued on the last day. John has mentioned the book of life several times before in chapter 3, verse 5, chapter 13, verse 8, and chapter 17, verse 8. Again, he's mentioned it in chapter 3, verse 5, chapter 13, verse 8, and chapter 17, verse 8, where it is said to be the Lamb's book of life and to have been written before the foundation of the world. This is a vivid way of safeguarding the truth taught by Jesus in John's Gospel. You did not choose me, but I chose you, as well as by Paul in Romans 8, chapter 8, verses 28 to 30, and elsewhere. But this, like justification by faith, is subject to the proviso that the God who chooses is the triune God who works as Father, Son, and Spirit, not as a blind watchmaker or celestial bureaucrat. God, the Creator, at last takes his seat for the final judgment. Here, as throughout Scripture, this judgment will be in accordance with the totality of the life that each person has lived. Now let's look at that. This judgment will be in accordance with the totality of the life that each person has lived. That, it seems, is what is written in the books. So, question: how does knowing that we are in the Lamb's book of life change who we are and what we do today? How does knowing that we are in the Lamb's book of life change who we are and what we do today? Okay, I have one more question, but I'm going to just preface this with a little statement. The way in which the verdict of the last day corresponds to the verdict issued in the present and on the basis of faith alone is by the work of the Spirit. The Spirit produces in the individual Christian that overall tenor of life. Paul does not suppose that Christians are incapable of sinning, which is seeking for glory, honor, and mortality. And we see that in Romans 2, chapter 2, verse 7. How have you seen the Spirit of God working within you to redeem, enhance your own thoughts, desires, and actions? So, how have you seen the Spirit of God working within you to redeem and enhance your own thoughts, desires, and actions? So there we go with a lot of questions. I do encourage you, as we get ready to close, to wind this down. I've always encouraged to do the study of Revelation as a group, not individual, just like any other Bible study. But if you do purchase this book, there's some very good after-action commentaries on each chapter. And I do encourage you to purchase this book. And I think you'll find it very enjoyable. What I will say, I'm going to close with this, what he says, a note of Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. I'll go ahead and read that to you. Why does John say that earth and heaven fled away from his presence? In chapter 20, verses 12 to 14, we see death is destroyed. This means that the processes of bodily corruption and decay are reversed, producing a new physical body with immortal properties. John told us from the early on that God is celebrated as creator of the whole world, and indeed that all creation joins in his praise. If creation is not gloriously reaffirmed at the last, God has been finally defeated. Satan has won. But the new heaven and the new earth in chapter 21 are the glorious reaffirmation. Earth had been corrupted by the evil done within it, and heaven too had been the place from which the Satan had conducted his initial rebellion. Now, with all obstacles to the ultimate goal having been removed, the corrupted versions of the earth and heaven can make way for the final reality to which they were advanced signposts. The rule of death is at an end. The rule of life is about to begin. So there we go. So 2 more weeks, and then we will be finished with the book of the study of Revelation. Again, I'm Father Steve, Episcopal Priest, serving here in the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland. And have a great day. God bless.